I'm Eleanor Loughlin, I'm the Student Study Skills Coordinator, and what we're going to do for the next 50 minutes is think about speed reading. So I'm going to give you some exercises to have a go at. I'm going to give you a handout at the end that has got all the information on the slides, plus some other tips on speed reading. The most important thing for you to take away from today is that at the back of this handout, page 16, there is a plan, a 25-day plan. And I can guarantee, if you follow this plan, it's short exercises, about 10 minutes a day, that's all. If you follow that for the next 25 days, your reading speed will increase and it will stay high. So I've never known anyone who's followed that and not at least doubled their reading speed. So it's very, very important you're aware of that at the beginning. Okay, so let's start, step back a moment from speed reading, and I'll pass this round. You can take one and pass them on. That'd be great. A few more here, so you want to start passing them. Any papers that are excess, just leave them there in a pan. I'll pick them up at the end. So, speed reading is part of a reading strategy, and many of you will already have a reading strategy. For some of you, you'll think, oh, well, this is how I read anyway, but this is just a reminder and to give you some ideas for those of you who don't have a reading strategy yet. When we think about reading, it's important that you become an active reader. An active reader, the easiest way to explain that is to actually contrast it with passive reading. Now what the passive reader does is they receive the bibliography or their reading list for an assignment, and they think, right, I've got to collect all that and read it all because I need to take everything in. Now you're grimacing already there. That's passive reading. Now why is that passive reading? Because it's really difficult, as you'll find if you read like that, to maintain motivation. It's also hard to concentrate, and you actually don't retain as much as if you adopt an active reading strategy. So what's the difference? An active reader actually decides before they start reading what they're going to read. It's that simple. So this sheet is a series of prompts to get you thinking that way. The first section, stage 1 there, is a series of questions, prompts, to get you thinking about exactly what information you need. How are you going to use the information? You need very different information for an essay or a project or a presentation. What do you actually need? What do you already know? Because you don't want to waste time going and rereading that. What don't you know? Where are the gaps? And what don't you need to know? Very often people tell me, well, I read that chapter just in case. Well, the chapter's not going to run away. You can go and read that chapter when you need it. When you're working on a particular piece of work, it's important that you really focus on what you need now. So you answer those questions, and that leads you to identify which within the reading list or the resources that have been suggested are going to be the most important. So your next stage is to preview the text. So say you've printed off some articles and you've collected a couple of books. You can certainly preview by looking at things like the abstract in an article. It might have a list of keywords, the table of contents, the lengths of the individual sections, an index at the back. Is there a summary? All these things give you a really good sense of what's in that book or article. And if you read those first, it gives you a very clear idea of how important they're going to be. What you can also do, as it says there, is preview every page at 2 seconds. So, I mean, quite literally, turning it over like that and looking. Now, what would you see if you were going through a book or an article at that speed? You wouldn't be reading, that's for sure. What would you see? Words would jump out at you. Titles, subheadings, things like that. So that's instantly giving you an idea of, what are the themes, the divisions within this text. If you're interested in methodology and it's only a couple of paragraphs, that might not be the best place to look. What else might you see at that speed?
Subheadings?
Yeah, subheadings as well. So the things that maybe aren't in the index at the front, they're going to be in there as well. What else? Other than words?
Pictures.
Yeah, tables, pictures, diagrams, all those things that when we glance at, we get a sense of what the text around is all about. So again, they're going to be key in helping you identify what you need to read. So what you do is you go through previewing, have some post-its or something like that, and just put one on the important looking stuff. And then when you've got this pile of material, think about what do I need to read first? What look the most valuable? And start with that. So you've prioritised your reading. So you then read the material, and this is where speed reading comes in as a tool you can use. When you've done that, you then reflect on, have I achieved what I wanted to? Have I got the information I needed? If not, do I need to return to stage one and refine my search? Now, this seems a very sort of clunky way of organising your reading, but I can guarantee if you're not already thinking like this, if you start to think this way, it will save you time. You will not be reading as much, but you'll be reading what you really need. But once you get into this way of reading, you'll find you don't need a sheet like this. You will automatically start to think about, what do I really need? Do I have to read the whole of a book? Usually not. Do I have to read the whole of the article? Maybe not. So one of the key reasons why you've got to move to becoming an active reader is that passive reading takes a lot of time. So like speed reading, it's about saving time. This idea though of being an active reader and selecting what you read and also thinking about how you read it is not a new idea. Just to illustrate that. The thing about reading is that there will be texts that you do want to read slowly and carefully, that you want to read many times, and you really want to think about the voices coming through there. There will be other texts that you need to get through quickly to find the information you need. So speed reading is about having strategies to read at different speeds. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, what I'm going to do now is move on to tell you a little bit about what happens when you learn to speed read, because it's quite an unusual concept. So I want to start with where we start as readers and some of the ideas we have about reading, and then I'll take you through to what you'll find you'll be doing as a speed reader, and then we'll try some exercises. So if you think back to when you were a child learning to read, you were told to break things down. If you think about it, you learn the sounds. So children now study phonics and the ACT rather than the ABC. You learn the sounds of the letters, and then you blend the letters to make additional sounds, and then you add them together to make a word. And when you're struggling with a word, your teachers, your parents would say, break it down into the sounds. So you sound it out and you build up a word. Now what this does is that we grow up thinking that if we read slowly and carefully, then we actually have a higher level of comprehension. So do we really understand more if we slow down? Just have a read of that. You don't read like that as an adult, do you? You don't break words down into syllables like that. So as you grow older, you look at the whole word rather than the individual components. It's very rare that an adult, particularly in their native language, will break down a word like that. That's because we recognise the whole. But what you find as you learn to speed read, that you move from a situation where you might now be, some of you might have moved beyond this, where you're reading one word at a time and constructing a sentence. You're moving to a situation where you actually read at the level of phrase. So a good speed reader looks at the whole of that phrase and takes it in. Just in the same way that you look at a word with 5 syllables and take it in. Whereas when you were a child, you wouldn't have been able to do that, you'd have had to break it down. So, as it says here, this actual speeding up has been shown to actually increase comprehension. Because if you think what your brain can do, if you think how you can be watching a film, talking to somebody, doing some work on a laptop, your brain can take in an awful lot of information. And often reading, our mind wanders because we're not actually taking in enough information to keep our brain really occupied. So speed readers taking in a lot more information and the brain can cope with that. So what I'm going to do, just to give you a quick test now, I'm going to put a statement up on the board and I'm going to put it up a phrase at a time and it's going to come up and then disappear. Just have a go at reading this whole statement, but try and look at the phrase rather than reading the individual words. Just see if you can do it. Did you get that? Yeah, should we do it again? Just to see. And that's what speed reading is about. You'll become naturally, you won't even notice it. You'll only notice it now because I've flagged up that's what's happening, but you'll find that you start to, you're looking at more than one word at a time. You're taking in chunks. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I can read the words quickly, but then when I come to the end, I think I've forgotten how to read.
On the screen then?
Not then.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing speed reading.
It should be that what will happen is when you're doing the exercises at first, you'll find that you're going quickly and your brain's thinking, hey, what's going on here? Oh, and not concentrating. But that's one of the reasons why you need to do a little bit of exercise every day. If you stick at it and keep doing the exercises, your brain gets used to it and goes, oh yeah, the information's just coming more quickly, and then you concentrate more on the information. So that's why, after today, I'm not saying that you read the way we're going to read in the exercises in your normal studies, okay? The exercises are unusual, they're designed to get you speeding up, but what you will find that as a result of reading the exercise, or doing the exercises, you will just speed up, okay? So you won't consciously be trying to speed up, you will just be reading more quickly. We'll also look at a couple of things that if you've got to get through things very quickly, that can really help with that as well. So yeah, your brain does sort of go through, oh, what's going on here stage, but if you stick at it, as I say, and do a little bit every day, you will find that it gets used to it. Okay, now I'm going to pass a text around. You can all take a copy. Don't start reading it yet. Okay.
Eleanor, what's the best way to take notes when you want to read a text quickly as well?
That's a good question. The thing that I find when I'm really pushing myself as fast as I can and going through, what I actually do, say it's an article, I print it off and use a highlighter and then come back to it and make notes or little annotations. My friend whose research is very book-based uses those tiny little post-its and highlights the things that they're going to come back to, and then in turning the text into your notes, which in itself is a process of understanding, then they actually go back and do that separately. You can, I do know other people though who speed read and stop and make notes at the appropriate part. That's absolutely doable as well. For me though, I quite like, once I'm in the speed reading groove, I just go through it, make little things as I go through, little marks with my highlighter or a post-it, and then go back and make notes. It seems a bit of an odd thing to do it twice, but what you find is that, as with anything, read things twice and you have a high level of understanding anyway, so it's actually beneficial. And you've saved so much time speed reading it that you're not losing time. So try different things with the note taking alongside the speed reading. This article I've given you, this section, sorry for the book, this I've chosen because it's not easy to read, it's not really basic, it's got some sort of quite unusual terms in there. So it's a sort of middle of the road to more difficult sort of piece of written text. What I'm going to ask you to do is to read for a minute. I'm going to tell you to stop and then, tell you to start, and then when I say stop, this is for you to take away afterwards. I'd like you just to put a mark or put your finger on the word you've got to. Now, I want you to read at just your normal pace. So don't try and push yourself, just read. I'm not going to ask you to share how many words you read with anyone else. This is for you, it's about your development. So I'm not going to ask you to share that, but it's just to get a baseline of what your normal reading speed is. Okay? So, is everyone ready? Okay, and start. Stop. Okay, now to work out how many words you've read, the numbers on the left-hand side actually are the word count at the end of the sentence they're next to. So the first one there is 44 words, and that's 44 words to the end of the sentence it's next to, the line it's next to rather than sentence. So from that, if you can work out how many words you've read. Just to say, the numbers have fallen off at the bottom of the page. The bottom number is 603, but just so you can work that out. Yes. Yes. Here we go. Does anyone else need a pen? Yeah. Yeah, so. Okay. Give you that, you just pass it down, thank you. Okay, now, as I said, I'm not going to ask you to share how many words you read. Just make a note of that somewhere, just so you've got that to refer back to. Can I just check though, and I didn't hear the page go over, but did anyone read over 800? No, good. Now, the reason I ask is that every now and then, you get a natural speed reader. They just somehow learn to speed read. Speed readers can easily read over 800. The world record is over 3,500 words a minute with full comprehension. I just can't imagine turning the pages that quickly, let alone reading them as well. So there is a lot of scope for development. What's a normal reading speed? It varies. It varies from the situation, the sort of text. It varies greatly whether it's your first, second, third or fourth language. But usually in native language, you're looking at between 100 and 400 words a minute. But don't worry if you're below that, it's absolutely fine. If you're above 400, then that's above the average. So, what I'd like you to do now is, I'd like you to read again for a minute, and this time, I'd like you to imagine that you're reading under pressure. You've got a minute and you really have to read as much as you can. So I want you just to push yourself. So imagine I'm going to whip that article away in a minute. You've got to read as much as you can. So I want you to start from the point where you've finished. Read as quickly as you can for a minute with some comprehension, by which I mean if you come to any peculiar words that you're not sure about, don't worry about them, keep going as long as you get a general sense of the meaning of the sentence. Okay? So are you ready to go? And start. Stop. Okay, so again, if you can work out how many words you read that second time. So, did you see an increase? More than 10%? Yeah, anyone as high as 50% or higher? Yeah? Now, isn't that interesting that you can already, we all have it in us to read at different speeds. So, why is that? Why can we read at different speeds? Well, it's the same reason. You can run at different speeds, or you can row a boat at different speeds or swim at different speeds. It's because it's a physical activity. Speed reading is nothing to do with your mind being up to it. It is absolutely a physical activity, and it's about your eyes. That's the key thing. It is about training your eye muscles. Now, let's think about the eyes, how eye muscles work. What I'd like you to do is to try a simple exercise, and I'm just seeing if we've got an even number, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, brilliant. If you can in pairs, what I'd like you to do is face your partner and take it in turns to do this. First of all, I want one person to slowly trace a circle in the air and ask your partner to follow it with their eyes. And while you're doing that slowly, watch their eye movements, and then ask them to follow the same circle in the air in front of you, but without your pen as a guide, and see if you can see a difference in the way their eyes move when they don't have the pen to guide them. And then swap over and have a go the other way. Okay? Okay, so what's happening? I think you're sort of stark contrast there. How would you describe it? What's the first one like?
Smooth.
Yeah. And we take the pen away, and what happens? Yeah, it's sort of a hexagon thing going on, isn't it? If it is at least recognisable as a shape. So what's actually happening there with the eyes? Anyone any thoughts? What's the difference? What must be the determining factor here?
If we have a pen to concentrate on, we go at the speed that the pen is going, whereas we don't have a marker to go, we'll jump between points because that's a quicker way for the brain to publish that task.
It is partly that, yeah. And it is to do with the pen. The pen is the key thing. If you think about it in terms of as an animal, you need to be able to follow things moving around. You want to keep your eye on the thing moving. Whereas if there's nothing there, your eye does jump around. Eye movements, yeah. Have you ever done that thing where you've been reading and you suddenly realise you've read a sentence twice? Now, I always used to say to myself, oh, I mustn't have understood it the first time, so my brain has taken me back. But your brain hasn't. What's happened is your eyes are jumping all over the place. They do when you read. And if you watch somebody who's reading normally, you see their eyes, it's a sort of strange jumpy motion across the page. So, what can we learn from this? Oh, just to say, the muscles we are interested in are the eye motion muscles. Lens control is nothing to do with speed reading. And just to warn you, there are a few crackpot websites out there that suggest if you read in semi-darkness, then your pupils dilate and you take in more information. That's complete nonsense, you just damage your eyes. So we're only interested in the motion muscles. So, what can we take from this from a reading point of view? Using what we call a pacer or a pen. If your eyes have something to follow when you're reading, the movements are smoother and they're quicker. Now, there's various ways to do this, and there's various guidance in here on different ways you can do that. You'll see there somebody's using the finger, somebody else has got a ruler, so it can just be you pull something down like that. I've seen people with mobile phones like that. Or it can be a pen underneath, or it can be a pen like that. It is a matter of just trial and error and seeing what works for you. But you'll find reading like that, your eyes stay more focused. So what I'd like you to do is just for a minute is go back to the small boat sailing. Go back to the beginning of it again and just have a go. Does anyone want to borrow a pen with a nib that goes in? You're all okay? Yeah. Just have a go in your own time, just reading normally, but see what feels comfortable for you in terms of using the pacer. Well, it might be like that, might be like that, whatever feels better for you. Just have a go at that. Okay, how does that feel? Feel alright? A bit weird. Yeah. What happens is often when you start out with a pacer, your eyes keep going, you know, your eyes are following it, but your brain's going, oh, what's that pen doing there? Ooh, there's a pen. So it's hard to concentrate, but again, if you stick at it, and I do know people that use things like crochet hooks because they're so pale and insignificant and your eye doesn't get distracted by them, that can work well. I usually just use a pen with some sort of point at the end. I noticed you were trying with a sheet of paper there. How did that feel?
Well, I found when I was using the pen, I was just being like kind of really lazy, and I wasn't putting the pen to the edge of the text, so I was just sort of using the pen in the middle bit, and then it was not even under the text. I was just like really wavy. But it was better with the paper actually, because you could only see one line at a time, especially because it was light.
Yeah.
But actually before, I got told to use cocktail sticks because they're so small, and to paint the end of a cocktail stick with nail varnish for like a different colour for a different subject. So you remember.
Wow, that's nice.
In my undergrad, I got like someone advised me to do that.
That's an interesting idea. Did it work?
I did use it, but like I can't remember like if it worked or not. But it happens a lot.
Cocktail strips are certainly an excellent idea because they are so thin. What you were describing though, that how you sort of what really fast speed readers you often see them doing is they're almost, it is just in the middle because your eyes get trained and your eyes get better at moving smoothly across the page. So in fact, it becomes almost like a reminder to your eyes to keep going that way rather than your eyes following the pointer. And certainly, you know, when I'm in bed at night and I'm reading a book, I don't sit there with a pacer reading a novel. But I know from the amount of novels I can get through, the number of novels I can get through, that I am reading more quickly, even without the pacer. And I think that's because my eyes have been trained to move more smoothly. Oh, now I'm getting a not sure look there.
I think it sounds a ridiculous question, but what if the really important piece of information just happens to be at the end of the line? Do you know what I'm saying in terms of comprehension? You've skimmed over that.
No, you haven't. No. Do you mean if you're doing just that? You're still reading the whole, so your eye is following the whole sentence, but the pacer is no longer leading your eye from beginning to end. It's reminding your eye to keep going across. So it's reminding your eye of the motion rather than actually going through every single word. So that's for, you know, once you are speeding up, that's something to do. So it's not that you're missing off chunks of the text. Yeah.
But the thing is, I read a lot of things on my computer because it's so expensive to print really long articles out. So how would you, like, say, use the paper or use the pen if you're reading on a laptop screen?
Yeah, now you do read more slowly from a computer. Colleague and I were asked, or a few people kept asking us, what about Kindles? Because, you know, the screen is, the ink is better and what have you. And we reckon that whereas you're between 20-30% slower for a computer, reading off a screen, you're only about 10% slower on a Kindle because it is more akin to a page. What you can do with a computer is almost use the bottom of the screen in the way that you were using that sheet of paper. So you scroll, so it literally is one line at a time, and the bottom of the screen becomes your pacer, in effect. So there is a little bit of information there about reading on the screen, but certainly if you are using a tablet or a Kindle, one of the things I found was there was a bit of a tension there between having enough text on the screen to read, but not having it too small, you know, because it is sort of quite a small thing. So play around with them and see, you know, is it better to have it landscape or portrait, and on the computer screen see, you know, what's a better font? Is putting a filter colour over better? You know, having, rather than the black-white contrast, maybe having a yellow background or a cream background can help as well. So try with that, but certainly, yeah, using the bottom of the screen or the bottom of the page is a good way of pacing yourself on the screen. Shall we try some exercises? Right, these are what we call Formula 1 exercises, and these are about pushing yourself as fast as you can go. And for this, you can put small boats sailing to one side for the minute, and I've got some Harry Potter, so keep it a little bit lighter. Now, when you do these exercises, I would suggest that you use a piece of fiction, something quite light, like a Harry Potter or something you've read, because these exercises, you don't want to be tripping over unfamiliar words and phrases. You just want a text that's easy to understand. So for these exercises, just use something like that, rather than maybe a piece of academic text. Right, so in these exercises, what I want you to do is to read as fast as you can. That's the key thing here. So you're reading with comprehension, but as when I asked you to read fast before, if there's an occasional word you don't get, just go over it and keep going as long as you're getting a general gist of the meaning. And I'd like you to try and use pacing while you're doing these exercises to get you used to it and also to help you speed up. So, what we're going to do first of all is ask you to again read for a minute and just put a mark when I say stop. Okay? A minute and start. Stop. Okay, now this time I don't want you to count the words. What I want you to do is to think how much you've read. Say you've read 2 paragraphs. I'd like you to put a mark a third further on from what you've read. So say you've read about 600 words, put a mark at 800 words. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to read exactly the same text you've just read plus an extra third. So if you can figure out what an extra third would take you to, okay, does that make sense? And then you're going to read what you've just read plus an extra third. So this time you push yourself a little bit harder. It should be a little bit easier because you've already read the first chunk of text first. Once, so it's the second time of reading. So, is everyone ready? And, just let me get ready and start. Stop. Okay, did anyone manage to read their extra third? Well done. Did anyone get into the extra third? Yeah. Don't worry if it feels like you're slowing down, because in fact you're pushing your eyes quite hard here. So if you sort of feel you're slowing down, don't worry about it. It is just that your eyes aren't used to this. We'll try one more exercise. I'd like you to turn to a new piece of the text. Yes. Oh dear. Somebody's eaten that one. I should pass me that one back and then I don't accidentally put it in the pile of ones to distribute. Thank you. Right. So again, I'm going to ask you to read for a minute as fast as you can, first of all. So you're ready? And start. Stop. Okay, so just put a mark again where you've got up to. Now this time I'm not going to ask you to add a third on. What I'm going to ask you to do is to read exactly the same piece of text but in 45 seconds. So this time we're cutting down the amount of time, rather length of time, rather than increasing the text. So is everyone ready? And start. Stop. Okay, did anyone manage to do that? Well done. Okay, well just let's see what happens if you read it the third time, but this time in 30 seconds. Just see what happens then. Okay, so it's the third time you've read it, so you should know this inside out by now. So ready to go and start. Stop. Okay, did anyone manage that? Well done, well done. Now, don't worry if you didn't. If you read more than half of what you read the first time, then you speed it up. If I was feeling really bad, we'd go for 20 seconds, but we're not going to do that because you've been working your eyes really hard. Are anyone's eyes feeling a bit odd? This is why, well, it can be that, you know, people's eyes sort of feel a bit strange, a bit achy. It's important that you do build up your eye muscles in the same way you would build up your muscles through exercise. You slowly, gradually work up to those faster speeds. That's why it's short exercises every day. These are exactly the sorts of exercises that are outlined in the handout. So you just need to set yourself up with a timer on your phone or your computer and you can do these exercises. Just to give your eyes a little break and just to finally pick up on another reading, a way of reading that can be very useful as part of your reading strategy. Very often you find that when you've got a text, sometimes the two seconds a page thing doesn't work, particularly if you're dealing with very dense text that doesn't have an awful lot of subheadings or diagrams. So what can you do to get a sense of what's in there before you actually read it? Simple technique that some of you will already be using, I'm sure, is skim reading. It's a way of identifying what it is you need to read. Now, skim reading works on the basis that if English is well written, a paragraph consists of a first sentence, which is a topic sentence, which tells you what's going to be in the paragraph, and a last sentence which summarises. So, taking this further, we should, from just reading a first and last sentence, be able to get an idea of what is in a paragraph. So let's just try this. I'm going to put up, and this is the first paragraph from a book, just a book I've chosen at random, the first sentence and the last sentence of the first paragraph, and see if you have any sense what this paragraph might be about. Now, anyone have a stab? What, just in a phrase, what is that paragraph very vaguely about? You can actually get it from the first sentence. Don't even need the concluding.
Is it his contribution to the project?
Yeah, theory of rights. His theory of rights. So that's what it's about. So if you already know about Hatfield's theory of rights, I know about that. I don't need to read that paragraph. Let's just have a look at the second paragraph in the same book. There is the whole paragraph if you wanted to read it. Let's have a look at the second paragraph in the same book and see what this adds to the first about his theory of rights. Just notice the full stop has fallen off the first sentence, but it should have one. So, what do you think the focus of this one is? You can really sum it up in one word. Go on, have a guess. What's the one word that's jumping out there? Duty. Yeah, that's it. So, do we know about how it encapsulates duty as well? If we do, we don't need to read this. Now, the thing about skim reading is that it is dependent upon a paragraph being well written. Fortunately, most of what you read while you are at university, what you're advised to read, particularly textbooks and articles, is well written. So this can be a really useful way of finding out what's in a text. I use it a lot, and I just usually read the first sentence of each paragraph. I find the stuff that I then want to go back and read properly. So has anyone already used skim reading as a thing? Yeah, got some nodding. It's just to remind you, because it's something often we're taught at school, skim reading as a way of reading, but actually it's incredibly useful to use that technique as an adult. Now, any questions about this or anything we've looked at so far with regards to speed reading? Yeah?
Just in general, so like highlighting as you go, is that something that you would recommend doing if you're trying to speed read at the same time? Or is that adding on too many things?
I do, and I find it fine because I use the highlighter sometimes as a pacer almost. You know, you've got to be careful that your nib isn't on the page all the time, or it's just a constant highlighting thing. But yeah, using the highlighter. Some people don't like that though. They find it distracting highlighting as you go. But you see those little sticky post-its there up the side. Using those, just having a pile of those and just sticking them on as you go through can work just as well. Does anyone do that already?
I
Yeah.
have a small question.
Yeah.
When I move my pen very quickly, but my mind just refuses to translate the words. So sometimes I read it very quickly, but I cannot understand it very well.
Right. So, and is that a translation
Yeah.
thing, do you think?
Yeah, because when I read something, I always translate it from English to my own language.
Yeah. This is a challenge. If you are reading in a second language, you will be usually reading slower. What you will find is that for anyone actually learning to speed read, at first your brain's going, as I've said, you know, what's happening here, but your brain catches up. So your brain does begin to take the information in more quickly, and I'm sure what you will find is your brain starts to translate more quickly. So do the exercises in there and don't worry too much about not fully understanding. Then when you go back to your normal reading, you will find that you do read more quickly, you just do read more quickly, and your brain is translating. But it's a slow process. Now, I said that, you know, there's different speeds. Using the pacer, if I've got to get through an article really quickly, I always use the pacer. I find that really speeds me up. But if I'm just reading something at a good pace, then I often don't bother. But just sort of bear in mind that there's these different levels of reading speed. But you won't, if you do the exercises and your brain gets used to it, you will not lose comprehension because you're speed reading. That's a key thing to remember. Anything else before we move on to the final test? Okay, let's just see then what's happening now then. I'd like you to go back to small boat sailing that we started with. And I'd like you to turn to a new page, so you're reading a new bit of text, and try and use your pacer. And I want you to read with full comprehension, but at a good speed, something that feels comfortable. And let's just see, you know, what sort of speed you're settling into now. So is everyone ready to go? Okay, and start. Stop. Okay, so you can work out, using the numbers at the side, how many words you read there. Okay, now, comparing that with the very first reading speed, the first time I asked you to read that text, just looking at the two numbers there, has anyone seen an increase? Yeah. Double. Wow, well done. Has anyone else up round double?
Extra 100 words, maybe.
Extra 100, that's really good. Now, don't worry if you might have slowed down a little bit. Sometimes usually about 5-10% of people slow down, and that's because your eyes are getting tired now. But most people see between a 10, 20, 30% increase just with doing those exercises once. So, what you need to do is, I'll hand these round, and you can take a copy.
because I found then like actually I was reading it and I wanted to go faster because I wanted to move my pen faster, but then I was just thinking about other things.
Yeah. Now,
And
what
it always happens, I get distracted really easily.
that's because your brain can take in, as I said, a lot more information than your eyes are feeding it. So what you'll find is if you do the speed reading exercises, your eyes speed up and your brain will stop getting distracted because it will be getting so much information in, it will be fully occupied.
Okay.
So you will find that your did that go around this way? Your concentration will increase and your retention increases as you that one? Yeah, that's the one. Sorry, there was some other papers in there as well that shouldn't have been in there. Is that? Yeah.
It's just that one.
Yeah, just this one. Just this one. Ah, right. So don't know what they're doing in there. They're just extra copies of size. So if you work through those exercises, as I say, do the exercises. Push yourself with the exercises so you're not fully understanding, but your brain catches up very quickly when you go back to your normal reading. So the key message with this is that speed reading is a physical exercise and you can train yourself to do it. It's as simple as that. So imagine if you can double your reading speed and halve the amount of stuff you actually read. Because you become an effective reader, you can quadruple what you get through, which I think is a very useful skill, particularly with exams on the horizon. So have a shot at this over the holidays. See if you can get that reading speed up. Any other questions? Yeah.
Say you're reading like something from a textbook for the second time, maybe a week after or something. Do you go through it the same way?
Yes. So, say if you're revising, do you mean? Yeah. I would say yes. Go through it the same sort of way. You might find actually, say if the first time you read it, you stopped quite a lot. Maybe it's got a lot of graphs or equations in or images that you really need to study or really complicated ideas. You might find the second time you can read it more quickly because your brain is recognising those things. But just to flag up, and I'm sure this is something you all know, with the exams coming up, retention, the best way to ensure you retain information is to go to it several times. You know this? So if you read something one day, and then 24 hours later, read it again, and then a week later, read it again, and then a month later, read it again, you're at about 80% retention. And the most important point in that progression is apparently 24 hours later. That's why with revision it is so important that you don't just do it once and that's it. You actually keep going back to the material, the stuff you have to remember. And before you start the next day's piece of revision, read through what you did the day before and your retention is instantly up. So it's, as I say, 24 hours, a week and a month, and things stick. I know that from my experience of teaching. If I teach something with regularity, I can't forget it even if I try. So apply that to your revision and your reading, and that will help. Anything else? Yeah.
What about saying things out loud, like what you're reading? Do you recommend this?
No, because, well, it can be useful if it's something that, say you're working through it and you're trying to really understand this very complicated text, actually speaking it out loud and emphasising the key points can help you understand it. But vocalisation slows you down. If you speak the words out, you do read more slowly. So I would only use that, and I do use it sometimes. If I'm really struggling with something, I'll read it out loud and articulate the key points, and that helps my brain process it. But I wouldn't do as a matter of course, no. Yeah?
The age-old question, is it okay to listen to music without lyrics when you're reading, and things like that.
It is, but if you think about what's happening there, it's actually a way of ensuring your brain is fully occupied because you're probably not reading fast enough. Whereas if you're reading fast, you will find you don't need the music because your brain's too busy dealing with all this information that's coming in. I can't read with music, but I can read with the radio on in the background, Radio 4. And so I can have a voice in the background and read, but I can't have music. I mean, it's a very, very personal thing. So just be mindful of what works for you. But certainly, if I'm speed reading, it's silence because my brain's too busy to listen to music or people talking. Just finally to say, if anyone is dyslexic and is wondering, is this a useful strategy for dyslexia? It is. It has been shown in research that actually, rather than dwelling on breaking a word down, but reading at this speed, so you're taking information in chunks like that, actually is very useful. And certainly some schools are starting to use it in their support for children with dyslexia. My daughter's dyslexic, and I've tried it with her, and she says it's useful, though she's only 9. So, so she's still getting her head around it, but she does say, yeah, if I go quicker, it's easier. The words don't jump around so much. So, if you are dyslexic, or a friend who's dyslexic who thinks, speed reading's not for me, it might very well be useful. Okay, any more questions?
So we should basically just try and read quicker to make us focus more, essentially.
Yeah. If you read more quickly, you will retain more. It will stick in. Do those exercises. Carry on your normal reading in your normal reading way, using a pacer if you've got to go through it quickly. Do those exercises every day, and your normal day reading will just speed up. That's how it will be. Okay, you're welcome.